if people are angry, they're going to be really effing angry.
That was pretty good. Kind of a fruity one on this one. Pretty light. What does Grimdark even mean?
Can I do a title reveal?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, what is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining in. I'm super excited today because today we have our very first episode of the Book Brew here, where we talk books and also drink some brew, whether that's coffee or beer. I'm also super excited because we have our very first guest here on the channel, with that being E.J. Doble from the UK, who is the Thane of Grimdark, who has some books that you can purchase today, which I have done for a few of his books already. And guys, just look at these covers right here. I think the covers almost speak for themselves in terms of how cool they are. And also, guess what? The story inside is also amazing. I've already read 2 of them and highly recommend it. So, EJ, thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Everything's good. I am writing and busy.
Before we get into some actual questions for you, the whole premise is this whole thing, similar to Hot Ones or some other interviews out there. I'm trying to do something a little bit different within the BookTube community, where we drink some brew, and it doesn't have to be beer. It could be coffee too. It can even be tea, really anything that we can brew, because I know not everyone is a beer drinker, which is completely fine. So I always ask first if someone's a beer drinker, because I personally am a big beer fan. So I know we got you with the beer here today, so I'm super happy about that. And
yeah, my beer journey has only started quite recently. I come from a part of the UK where the bulk of drink is cider. Big lover of apples down my end of the country. But quite recently, I've quite enjoyed quite a few different beers. But yeah, I have a penchant for beer and coffee, so who knows, there might be a round 2 in the future where we try coffee instead.
Hey, there we go. First one. I'm just gonna grab just a random one here. This is from a company that I got from my local grocery, and it's called the Kona Brewing Company, and it looks like they have a bunch of tropical type of beers. Okay. So tropical time in the close to Christmas time, I think we kind of have this little bit of an opposite going on here. So I'm in Florida, by the way, so it's almost always tropical around this time. So the first one I'm gonna do is called Liquid Aloha. So hopefully it transports me into Hawaii. So we'll see about that.
There's a beautiful color on that.
I know. Actually, has a good design on it. What about you?
I've got a it's called Invisible Cities. I'm not too sure actually where it's from. Doesn't actually say on here, but it's got quite a nice almost like a Tron Legacy kind of wrapping on it. And it's a hazy IPA. It's from the north of the country, I think, but as you can see here, it's got lots of electric blue bits in it.
And that kind of fits the theme that my whole aesthetic that I got going on.
It does actually, yeah. That's a very good point.
I'm a huge fan of the Tron Legacy type of colors, and actually the newer Tron movie I was actually a big fan of. So
yeah, Tron Legacy is a fantastic film.
So I'm just gonna open it up. Here we go. And cheers. Thank you, sir, again for being here.
Always.
Aloha.
That is a that is a complimentary bit of beer there. That is quite nice.
Getting into the book side of this interview, the first thing I want to talk about is really alongside your books, right? Because the books that I've actually been introduced to or really exposed to was in your Blood and Steel Saga. I know you have other books outside of that, which is awesome, but the books I have been reading have been in the Blood and Steel Saga, and I've been loving it so far. I read the prequel. That's actually what got me introduced into your whole universe. Was just scrolling through Twitter one day, I saw your covers, and they just stood out to me. I almost dropped whatever I was reading and just downloaded it instantly and started reading it.
Well, then it's the prequel book is serving its purpose. It's meant to be the eye catch that people kind of go towards and gravitate towards. So I'm glad it's doing its thing.
That was kind of leading to my first question, because I know I saw somewhere, I'm not sure if it was a online article or somewhere, where I think you reference the Crown of Omens, your prequel novella, being a experiment, yes. Right? So what was experimental about that book for you?
It was I wanted to approach it slightly differently, and I know that prequel novellas can sometimes have quite a lot of intrinsic links to the main story and stuff. And this one does, in the fact that it happened literally the night before all the events that happen in the main series. But equally, I wanted it to be a showcase of the way I write and how I portray characters and dialogue and stuff like that. And so I didn't want to then constrict myself, I would say, with this idea of I need to write an individual character, to have an individual story, and it all just kind of focus on that. I wanted there to be quite a broad spectrum and quite a, like, show the full scene of what was going on, because obviously a lot was happening. There was a full siege on the harbour side, that's a full scene of action, and there are a lot of different players acting at the same time. So yeah, the experimental nature, I guess, was the fact that it is 10 chapters, it is 10 perspectives, and at least 8 of them are linked in a very brutal, I guess we could say, way. And it's just, it wasn't something that I'd seen done before, and I wanted to try and do that and use that as a way to say that, I'm willing to try different things as a writer, and also to say, here's how I do things. If you like this, the rest of the series will be perfect for you. That's kind of what I mean by experimental, I'd say.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that the format, in terms of, after I finished chapter 1, going into chapter 2, I was like, okay, this is different. Once I found out that brutal method of basically going from chapter to chapter, it was very fun to read through. In terms of like success for this experiment, I think it worked on me. I mean, I instantly bought the book and I loved the book, and it made me continue within the series. What does that definition of success look like for you for this type of experiment with the prequel?
I think the fact it hasn't been review bombed is probably, for me, kind of that's my line of saying it's done all right. Yeah, people have said that they've enjoyed it, they've engaged with it, and if I was to try to sell it as a like a prequel story, and the story was focused on a character, I would probably be mis-selling the book. And I imagine that would cause some issues, but because I've said from the start, this is an experimental book, it has different perspectives, you're taken through an event rather than any individual character's place in it. I think a lot of that messaging has helped with how the book is then received, and also equally, the payoff is that people like yourself, and I know a couple of other people who I get quite a lot of nice reviews from, have all said, you've done it again, it's working, this all fits together nicely, and that's kind of a big like blessing point for me, in that I try something different and it pays off, so that's always quite nice.
Yeah, going back to what you're just saying right there, when you're saying it wasn't review bombed, whenever you like see like a notification like on Goodreads, or even when people mention you on Twitter, do you ever get like slightly nervous before opening what the notification is?
Every single time. And I haven't really, I've encountered like 1 or 2 times when it's been more negatively aimed than other, I wouldn't want to say negative, but critical, where it's been more critical than with having a certain amount of praise with it. But again, I'm fully accepting that not every book is for every person. And contrary to a lot of people and a lot of indie authors who I've spoken to and I've been on panels with and stuff, I do read every single review, good ones, bad ones, indifferent ones, the ones that thought it was okay. And a lot of that is because I want to understand what the spectrum of opinion is towards the work that I do, because some people will say I don't like it because the structure doesn't work for me, or the writing style is a bit too all over the place, or a bit too descriptive for me, and stuff like that. Yeah. And that is absolutely fine. There's nothing I can do about that. That's how I write. I'm not for you. That's fine. But when people give individual things, like I had quite a few people say, maybe you could do with another pass of editing, maybe some sentences could be less convoluted, and they quote certain scenes. I will genuinely go back and I will look at the file, and I'll look at the wording I've used and the choices I've used, and I will say, okay, how can I improve on that on the next one? Because that's part of what I do, and it's a case of because again, I don't have an editor, I am my editor, and my lovely fiance is my She's my advanced reader for a lot of what I do. So it's a very good litmus test of, if she likes it, chances are it's good enough for me to then look through and edit and try and decipher. But yeah, it's a long process, and I try and learn as much as I can for every single book I write, in the hopes that the next one's better than the next, and so on from there.
You ever get people that complain to you about like cursing inside your novel? I think like cursing, at least in your work, it adds to the atmosphere of the overall story within the world of Icebreaker Sea, and to me, it really adds to like the character development and just being immersed within the story. Do you ever get people that complain about it? Because sometimes I read like comments on Reddit or even on YouTube where people, once they get to like curse words or a lot of curse words in the story, it takes them out of the story. Do you ever get that for your books?
I wouldn't say necessarily that I've personally received any particular qualms about that kind of thing. But again, I think a lot of that is messaging. You see a snake curling around a crown on the front cover, and it's a black cover, and you read the blurb and you think this is probably going to have a lot of gory bits and swearing bits in it, and I am very open about that. And it's something that I do consider when I write. I do taper it down sometimes. Effectively, I look at each section of dialogue. I'm not one of those writers who puts swear words and curse words and stuff into the actual like narrative text body that the narrator's kind of positing on them. I don't know if that's necessary, but characters and dialogue and stuff, if people are angry, they're going to be really effing angry, and that's part of their character. And I have some characters who swear more, some characters who swear less. One of my other series, Realm of the Prophets, that has no swearing in it, and as a matter of fact, the first book is probably suitable for anyone between 13 and 18, as far as like content goes. So I do that consciously, and in the same way, I put swearing consciously into my Grimdark books, and I haven't received any complaints about it so far, but I think that's purely because people who would complain about it take one look at the book and go, maybe not, which is absolutely fine. That's that's the kind of interaction and kind of understanding I want with my writing.
I'm thinking with like just the Grimdark genre in general, you can expect that brutal atmosphere and like realistic dialogue in terms of people screaming, cursing, or being belligerent. But
yes,
have you read any J. Kristoff before in terms of like the Nevernight series or Empire of the Vampire?
I've read sections. I've started reading sections of Nevernight individually. I really need to get around to Empire of the Vampire. It's one of those books that I saw come out last year and I thought, is it for me? But then I'm thinking, Grimdark, a bit of vampires, a bit of blood and intrigue and stuff. That's totally up my street, so I do need to get around to it. But I have heard that there is it's quite a brutal and quite vulgar. Has quite vulgar sections in it, but again, that's part of the genre.
That's what I saw in terms of like a bunch of people. They either loved that book, or they just dismissed it, or just DNF'd it like a few pages into it because of the cursing. So I was just interested to see if that kind of trickled into your books at all, but it sounds like not really. So I'm a fan of it. Keep doing it. Keep bringing it in. I think it's great. So.
Oh, I definitely will.
Going back to your books real quick, I know we were talking on Twitter, or X, or whatever you call it nowadays, about your sequel to The Fangs of War being The Horns of Grief, being a little bit of a different beast compared to The Fangs of War. So what about this is different in terms of it being a whole different beast?
I think part of that is the relationship that I have with it, because The Horns of Grief had a very difficult upbringing, let's say. It's my trouble child as far as writing goes.
Okay.
And I wrote it in 7 months straight.
Oh wow.
Yeah, finished it on holiday. And then I left it and I wrote the first book in my Realm of the Prophet series. And then I came back to it and I had to rewrite 2/3 of two of the character arcs in the book, Kavara and Savanta. because I didn't like them and they needed work. And that then took me an additional 5 months, which then pushed my release date back.
Mhm.
And then I had other technical issues at the time, which I'm sure a couple of my regular readers who be watching this will know. It was a lot of technical issues. But equally, when I wrote it, it felt very different in tone to the Fangs of War, and that doesn't necessarily come across to, a reader who just picks it up and experiences the book for the first time. But as I was writing it, it felt more tonally different.
Okay.
I was establishing kind of what the stakes were in the first book, and now with them in the second book, the stakes were established. Now let's, throw a fireball in there and see what happens. And I can say quite comfortably that book 3 is going to kind of detonate in the same way. It's just it felt very different from the Fangs of War in a way that was quite distinct while I was writing it. And yeah, it's my little trouble child, but it's also probably the book that I've written that I love the most. Just because of that kind of slightly awkward relationship I have with it, where I both want to rip it to pieces and also sign every copy I can.
I'm interested to hear about these technical difficulties, because usually when you think of books, you don't think of technical terms, maybe like a Kindle, but in terms of a book and technical issues, I mean, is that something that you want to go into, or is it still fresh?
No, yeah, the technical issues were that at the time I uploaded paperbacks. Again, I'm going into a bit of self-published lore here.
Okay, that's fine.
But I published my standard paperbacks in one way, and then I also published using a wholesaler based in the US. For whatever reason, the two barcodes didn't sync properly, and the barcode on the wholesaler connected to the first book in the Realm of the Prophets on Amazon, and so then people were buying one book and received the other book, and then and then it displayed on there reviews of one book, and then the cover of one and the back cover of the other, and then descriptions and it was an absolute mess. And it took me a good 5 weeks to be able to actually scrub all that down and polish that off.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And if I'm honest, it did impact sales. It did impact the overall image of the book, and it's going to, because people then feel, I completely understand, this is a product where the author has warned you, there are faults with this, and you might not receive the book that you want. And so people then don't really want to pick it up or engage with it. But now that it's kind of recovered, and with the release of the Crown of Omens and stuff, it is picking up again, which is nice. So there's a little bump in the road, and I think all self-published authors have a bump in the road somewhere. And if mine is for my, my third book that I've released, happy days. Hopefully that means smooth sailing for 3 years, touch wood. But it was a very stressful time. But luckily I have not repeated the mistakes, so I believe I've learned.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that being incredibly stressful. After spending so much time on getting that uploaded and put together,
Yes.
ready to sell, or ready to get, go for selling it, and then, I'm sorry, that sounds awful.
It was tough, but all sorted now. So, and you can get copies as you have, without fault. So happy days.
Yeah, I'm a testament. You can buy it now, guys. I got mine without a problem. Hey, that's a question for you in terms of going back to the self-published lore. In terms of, because I bought this on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Does it print on demand for your books right now?
So I've quite recently moved over, and I no longer use Amazon's paperback service, and that is purely from a perspective of quality. I also use a wholesaler company called Ingram Spark.
Okay, I've heard of them.
Yeah, who are, the quality on some of their stuff is absolutely magnificent. All of my copies are Ingram Spark copies, and they always will be. And now any paperbacks that you buy will be the slightly shinier looking Ingram Spark copies. And it is still print on demand. There's always a slight stocking issue when it comes to that kind of thing, getting it from a third party and stuff. Obviously, if it was print on demand through Amazon, like it was, about 3 months ago, then it'd be a case of you could get it one day and then get it printed the next. In this case, you get it and then it might take 5 days to a week. The projected times on some of the like deliveries are absolutely ridiculous. When I first changed it over, I'm pretty sure the initial like copies of the Horns of Grief and the Fangs of War, it was like 6 or 7 weeks until they'd like send them. What? It didn't end up being that. It ended up being 10 days, but they show it like that because they can guarantee they can get the stock in and all that stuff.
Okay.
La business. But
building a lot of buffer room there. A lot.
And yeah, nowadays everything I do is by Ingram Spark. My Kindle copies are still obviously through Amazon, but everything else is through Ingram Spark, and I haven't had any issues with it, so it was a smooth transition.
Well, I think we got to the point now where we can move on to the second beer, which I don't even know if you took a second sip of that one that you currently have.
I haven't actually. I'll do that now.
There we go. And for my second one, it's from the same company still. It's called My Time Light, which it kind of reminds me of like a Mai Tai, which is like a cocktail, you know, but this is My Time. So I'm about to see how it is right here.
I've got myself it's from Siren Brewing Company. And I tell you what, you know, beer and IPA cans are absolutely gorgeous. They are some of the nicest looking, you know, alcohol products that there are.
Oh, yeah.
And mine is called Pompel Marcello, and it's juicy grapefruit sour.
Hey, that sounds pretty good.
I have no idea what this is going to taste like. I've never had this before. This is a case of I kind of stumbled into my local shop and thought, okay, what can I get? So yeah, let's give it a go. It's quite a pretty can.
Yeah, IPA cans, the art on these things are freaking top notch. So we're almost, a lot of the cans just slap that art on a shirt and you can wear it all day long.
Honestly, I would hire some of these people. No, they're really nice. Right, so yeah.
That one's pretty good. Kind of a fruity one on this one. Pretty light, like the name suggests. How about you? I don't know if it's hitting for you.
Grapefruit, yes. Sour, absolutely. Yeah, that is like eating underripe raspberries. That's quite impressive. It's not a bad taste. I just was not expecting it to be that sour. Yeah, that's like popping candy.
And for you guys who are watching this video back, I'm not planning on drinking 4 beers entirely.
No,
I don't think this is a get drunk type of video where we talk about books. We're just doing a little bit of a tasting, okay? Is that a beer that you would actually go back to, or?
It is my least favorite of the 2 I've tried so far. Okay. Maybe I'll go back to it. Maybe it's a very quiet taste. It's one of those tastes that is like in like 3 months I'll think about it and I'll go, oh, I can really do some sour grapefruit something, and that's the flavor that comes to mind or something. But no, if I was walking down my local aisles, I don't necessarily know if I picked that one. But there we go. It's always good to try.
Yeah, at least you tried it. Going back to your discussion here about being a self-pub author. I actually want to talk a little bit more about that and, ask you, you have many hats being a self-published author. You're writing the book, you're designing the book with different artists or, cover artists. You're actually trying to get it in people's hands. You're marketing it. You're trying to promote it on, social media. Out of all these different hats that you're wearing, like which one do you enjoy the most and which one drains you in terms of your energy the most?
I'm going to give a cop-out answer. It would depend on which of my series I'm writing, what kind of book I'm writing, because I look at all my books in different ways, and it's a case of if I was writing, for example, I'm writing the sequel at the moment to The Crescent Moon, which is The Realm of the Prophets, and I won't lie, the writing process in that is by far the most, arduous part of it. But that's because it's slightly philosophical, so I'm kind of, I'm forging my blade. Then the idea of then sharpening it afterwards, doing the editing process and actually, crafting something into like a whole, that's very cathartic. That's probably my favorite bit. But when it comes to my other books, my Grimdark books, I find editing annoys, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find any self-published author who doesn't find editing kind of annoys. But I think, and it definitely have to be, cover design and stuff like that, and actually formatting the book, which is always the best, because my my artist for the Blood Steel Saga, Diego, who is one of the most magnificent artists I've ever come across in my life. It's like little presents that I'll send him off on a project, and like that cover, the story behind that cover, I sent him like a drawing I did, like a hash drawing I did of like the bottom half of the skull missing, beneath a cowl with like some horns sticking out, and that was it. It was this tiny little rush drawing I did on like a scrap of paper, and I said, "Can you do this?" And he produced that, and he sent me that about 3 months later, and I thought, I kind of like letting the illustrators that I hire to do these projects, I kind of like to get them to just go for it and just be creative, have a bit of leeway, have a bit of free space to do whatever they want, because some of the stuff they come up with is absolutely fantastic. And like for I can't talk too much about it, but for book 2.5 in that series, the next book's coming out, I had an idea for what I wanted the cover to be, and it was the first time my Diego said to me, "I have a better idea," and I thought, let's find out what happens. Okay. And I can remember receiving the first image of it about 6 weeks later, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. And
oh man,
I tell you what, if people like the book covers that I got so far for the Blood Steel Saga, book 2.5 is absolutely phenomenal for a front cover. I am flabbergasted by it. I'm very much looking forward to it, and that is by far my favorite bit of it.
No, I can definitely imagine that, and I definitely agree with you in terms of giving artists like that freedom to have the ability to make whatever they have in their mind and just put it on paper, put it in a digital format. Because I've had some experience with people just randomly on Fiverr, to where you give them a very baseline idea, where it's like, draw me a guy holding a lightsaber, but make it look cool, and then they come back with something that's just tremendous that you want to make it your phone wallpaper instantly. Yes. It's that cool.
Yeah, funny you should say that. For the other little series that I do, my Grimdark Fairy Tales, the cover I got for Gold Lock and Key, lovely Brazilian artist called Chapo. He's he's a very talented man. I didn't actually give him any, didn't give him any words for it. I didn't give him any pointers and stuff. I basically said, can you do it on a table, and can you do a dark version of Goldilocks? And he said yes, and he went off and he did it, and he came back, and 3 days later I had my front cover, and it was, oh my gosh. All I did to get that cover was I put out on Twitter, I put on a hashtag of artists of Twitter, is anyone able to do me a cover for X amount of money? And I looked through some of the responses and to see what some people were. His stood out. So I contacted him, and 3 days later, he's made me this fantastic cover. So
wow.
It's all a process, and I love that process, and I love meeting all these new people. It's one of my favorite parts of what I do.
Is that book out yet? Because I would love to see.
Yes, it is. Yes, it's only available on Kindle. Okay. It's the first of 5. So they're every book is going to be, I'm going to aim to keep them all below 100 pages. But they're all grimdark retellings of different fairy tales. And the catch is they all end in the same way. Oh. And I will leave that there.
All right. A little bit of a mystery there. Going to your writing process real quick. Mm-hmm. I know every author probably has their own sort of twerks or little caveats in terms of how they approach that process of writing. I'm asking from a environment perspective, in terms of when you're actually physically writing it, do you have to have like a completely quiet space where there's absolute silence? Or are you rocking and jamming to music? Or can you even write in like a drive-through in a McDonald's getting some food?
It would. Again, I'm going to give a cop-out answer. If I have to start a chapter, if I have to start writing a chapter, I have to start something new, a new section or whatever it is, I have to be in a quiet, dark room with no noise, dead silence, nothing on my desk. The only thing I have is me and a laptop, and that's it. Maybe a couple of notes on the side. But that is the only way I'm able to get the brain, get the claws going, and then actually go for something. And even then, I can sit there in front of the screen, and it can take me 45 minutes comfortably before I actually put anything on the page that stays there.
Yeah.
After I've started it, you know, if I write in 3 sessions, the first one is in a completely silent, you know, dark room, and it's just me and a laptop. The next one, I could be sat on my break at work, you know, tapping away on a pad or something. I could be writing on my phone, like you said, in a drive-through or whatever, and completely unfazed. So it's kind of a weird balance. To start a process, I have to have optimal conditions, but for any kind of creative outlet after that, I can kind of expand a little bit, which is quite nice. So yeah, that's kind of my process, I guess you would say, my environment.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen this, but SpongeBob, when he takes hours and he writes the word the.
Oh yes.
The word the. Just to get started, right? So yeah,
that is a self-published author's, you know, daily life.
So going back to your prequel real quick, something that I've seen recently, at least in like the self-published genre, or not genre, just the self-published world, is that I've been seeing a lot of authors put out prequel novellas. Is that done like on purpose to help like entice readers to, you know, pick up something that's short, so it's not a huge commitment, to basically just get into your series and get, you know, a taste of your work and your writing style? Was that done like purposely for you, or did you already have that in your mind to write that prequel novella?
Well, it's kind of grown with everything as I've developed the story and stuff, because originally the story was going to be 4 books, and then it became 5 books, and it became 5 in the novella, and it became 5 books and 3 novellas of the 2.5 and the 3.5, and now there's a spin-off idea that I've come up with in the near future and whatever else. But yeah, I think the driving factor behind me writing the Crown of Omens was definitely as a taster for people engaging in my writing and, you know, taking a step into this world and everything else. Yeah, definitely the impetus on that was, you know, a sampler and stuff like that. And I have been introduced to a number of great series based on a sample. The Citrine Key by L. McRae. I'm gonna put the name, Ruins of Smoke. Yeah, it's Ruins of Smoke, by João F. Silva. Just to name 2, were prequel novellas that I read. Servitor of Sin by Christopher J. Brenning. Those 3 I've read this year, and I absolutely plan to read the next book next year, and that's purely because I've had this taster that they've specifically built to be a taster, and it's worked. It's hooked me. I'm interested in the story. So, you know, proof's in the pudding. It works.
Yeah, the book that I go back to on that kind of like mindset or that method is Ryan Cahill in his Bound and Broken series. Like the Fall, like I think it's less than 100 pages, and it quickly gets you up in the speed into his series. So I've been talking to a few other, you know, self-published authors as well, and they're writing the prequel novellas. I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's, you know, short little reads that get you immersed into a story, get you immersed with that author, and then hopefully, you know, that grabs that reader for the entire length of the series. In this case, for you, I think it's definitely grabbed me. So, congrats, man! Thank you so much.
Excellent, no problem.
Going back into the actual story, you know, I've only read the prequel novella and Fangs of War, and one of my favorite characters in this one was Revik. This guy, he was a complete a-hole, but somehow had redeeming qualities in there. in terms of one page, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, a bad guy, and the next page he's actually helping people out. So is that guy or that character like inspired by anyone in your personal life, or is it just someone that you had in your mind that you needed to put onto a page?
Again, I could probably like pluck names out, but if I'm genuinely honest, it's probably drawn from a million different inspirations and stuff from various different places, and it's all kind of pinpointed in my brain subconsciously. But as far as, I think Ravek is probably my most original character that I've written so far, and that is purely because he is such a, like a pin-edged balance between being completely morally corrupt and being an anti-hero. And yeah, there's no necessary, I don't think of someone and then think of him, but as I was writing, it was always the idea of how can I make this person evil, but also have moments of grandeur or illusions of grandeur. Probably be his tagline. It's probably on his gravestone, is illusions of grandeur. But yeah, no, he is absolutely my favorite character to write, and he has become quite infamous. And long may he live, long may he reign, and long may he fall.
Oh, well, I think it's a good point now to get into the third beer already. Yes. And same company for me. It's again that Kona Brewing Company. This one is just a classic Kona Light Blonde Ale. So
blonde ale.
It's only 99 calories, so I'm living pretty healthy right now. Let's see.
I'm actually quite looking forward to mine. Mine is called a Nitro Breakfast Stout. Now, I don't know who is drinking stout at breakfast, but yeah, it's called Siren Broken Dream by Siren Brewing Company again, same we did the last one. But apparently there is chocolate and specialty malts in there, and it's slightly creamy. So I guess we're going to find out.
I'm actually a fan of chocolate in relation to beer. I'm not sure if you've tried this before, but Yingling Brewery, who is huge in America, they have a Hershey's collaboration. It's like it's a chocolate Yingling, and it tastes like Yingling at first when you first sip it, and then a complete aftertaste of just pure Hershey's. It's awesome. It comes out usually every October, around like October, November time. So someday, I think that's one you can try. But how's that one for you?
This one is absolutely lovely. The only thing I can relate it to is about 6 months ago, I had a mocha stout, chocolate coffee beer, which are probably my 3 kryptonites as far as luxury items go. It's absolutely lovely, and this is probably quite a close second. Yeah, this is really nice actually.
Hey, what's that one called again?
This is called Broken Dream.
Broken Dream.
Absolutely, again,
look at that art.
Beautiful artwork on the front. I would hire this person. Yeah, awesome. I'm still blown away by the artwork. And when it tastes good, that's a nice blend.
Going back, not to your books, but to your reading. You as a reader now.
Yes.
So are you currently reading anything? Do you have like a TBR that's years out?
I have a TBR until the end of the year. I'm currently reading 2 books. One paperback, one Kindle. My paperback book is The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie. And I think about 300 pages into that. And I am thoroughly enjoying it. More so than the first one. I had a bit of the first one didn't blow me away. But yeah, this one is definitely, it's hitting all the right notes. It feels more balanced than the other ones as far as character work is concerned. So I'm really enjoying it. And I'm also actually reading I read a lot of indie, or try and read as much indie as I possibly can. amongst my other books that I obviously have copious amounts of. And I'm reading the sequel to it's part of the Boiling Seas series by Hugh Steer. I read The Blackbird and the Ghost last year, and it was quite a fun little like a treasure hunter fantasy book kind of thing. But it was really light. It was it wasn't really heavy going at all. It was a nice simple story, had a nice structure to it, and I just really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. And yeah, I've just started the sequel, and it seems to be going in that kind of direction as well. Which again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm starting to enjoy that one as well. I'm looking forward to that.
Now I feel the same way about books that don't have to go too in depth or too dense of a book, to where it's just a nice simple read that you can not put too much brain power into. And the books that come to mind for me is like the Dresden Files. I'm not sure if you read any of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher.
I can't say I have, but I've heard a lot about them.
And they're not dense, right? They're not like a Malazan book, or even like your books. I think are a little bit more involved for you to actually read and have these amazing quotes and amazing descriptions. Jim Butcher's books, or the Dresden Files, it's just dialogue focused, character focused. You get through it, fun story. You can read it within a couple days. So I love stories like that. That I guess it could be like a palate cleanser.
Yes.
Where in between your massive series, you can just have this nice relaxing read. So those are always fun.
I had a lot of that with another indie author, Tom Dunbrow, last year. I read 3 of his books across the year, and all of them are light, fun, books with a lot of the great cast of characters. And at the time, I was also reading the Empires of Dust series by Anna Smith Spark. Second book in that series was my book of the year. It is, if I can think of any characters that are most related to Ravek, it's probably Marith in that series. He is atrocious, but I absolutely love that book to pieces. But reading between that and then reading Tom Dunbrow's at the side by side, it was nice to kind of put one book aside and go, and I can now breathe, and I can read this nice book, and now I can go back to this horrid one, and just love both of them at the same time. So yeah, definitely palate cleanser, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Do you usually read about two books at the same time? Because I put a poll out on my YouTube page where I was asking all the viewers that I do have, I was like, how many books do you read at a given time? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4, or even more than 4? And the biggest majority was 1. Only 1. So I was interested to see that, because sometimes I have 4 books going on at the same time. How many books do you usually read at a given time?
Mine has changed since I got a Kindle. I only got a Kindle over the summer. I've never owned a Kindle. Well, I did own a Kindle a long time ago, but up until recently, I've never owned a Kindle. I never thought I'd like having a Kindle, because I quite like having a physical book. But yeah, I read so much faster on a Kindle. Pages absolutely fly by. And yeah, it's a completely different experience, and does make reading a lot easier. So at the moment, I try and average reading about 2 at a time, which I kind of dip between. Typically, I will obviously read my paperback slower. So if I finish my ebook, then I will not start another one until I finish my paperback and stuff like that. Okay. The only time that ever changes is I'll occasionally slip up to reading 3 books. But that's only if I also include a non-fiction, which I kind of read over the month. Because I do read a lot of non-fiction as well. I'm a massive fan of history, so and that does come through in my writing quite a lot. It's typically 2 nowadays. Used to be 1, typically 2, sometimes 3, depending on if I'm in the mood for something non-fiction. It varies.
Are you a audiobook guy at all?
I've never got into them. And that is that's purely because I don't know if my brain functions that fast to be able to actually process anything that an audiobook says. Last time I listened to an audiobook was probably when I was about 8, and my nan had a copy of James and the Giant Peach and Ezio Trot in her car. So whenever we went somewhere, we stick the audiobook in and we listened to the stories, and that was always really nice. But no, I've never really listened to many audiobooks. It's something that I do want to get into. and I will shout her out here. I've read 52 books now this year, most I've ever read in a year. My partner is about to top 190 this year.
190.
Yes, she's a very avid reader, and she blends
Oh my God.
Kindle, paperback, audiobook all in one. She'd be reading about 4 or 5 books at a time. I think it's incredible. It's not something I can do, but yeah, fair play to her. I know people who read like 300 books a year, and it's I don't know how your brain can have the capacity to be able to process all the information you've got going on, but creds to them.
Wow, that's insane. 190 books a year. Yeah, I'm around the same as you. I'm like right around the 50 book mark, which is my best year ever. Last year, only 26. So
I'll drink to that.
I'm picking it up. Yeah, I know some people as well in terms of audiobooks. Like they take that book, they take the speed, they just move it all the way to the max, or they're reading almost like 4 times the speed. Like at that point, are you even like comprehending or retaining what's being said?
That's the thing. The only other times I've ever tried an audiobook, I've actually had to slow the speed down because I really have to think about what they're saying. Because I blame a creative mind. I am so absent when it comes to like thinking about different separate things at the same time. And so it'll be a case of, if I drive along and I'm listening to something, even if it's just like football on the radio or anything like that, if I catch sight of something, or if I see a bird going over, I think, oh yeah, what's that bird? I completely missed the last 5 minutes of whatever I've been listening to. So yeah, I don't get how people do it. I completely respect they can, but there must be a point where your brain just can't comprehend anymore.
Well, I know you mentioned that you're currently reading Abercrombie. I actually have not read Abercrombie just yet. And like everywhere you see within the fantasy genre, his name is up, on a pedestal. Same as Sanderson, in terms of being just 2 iconic authors. You just need to read when you're diving into the fantasy genre. So Abercrombie is just known for the Grimdark Fantasy genre as well. In your mind, because I think it's kind of loose in terms of what does Grimdark actually mean. In your mind, like what does Grimdark even mean to you as a Grimdark author?
I think Grimdark is. I think every fantasy story should be a balance between hope and desperation, and those should be 2 like pillars that kind of balance each other out. If you want a standard fantasy story, hope is slightly above desperation. Grimdark, desperation is above hope, but hope always prevails. Or sometimes it doesn't. I've read a couple of books where at first I thought the ending was disappointing, but then I've thought about it a month later and I think, no, actually that is the perfect way you could have ended that, just because of how sorrowful the story was. I think it's the idea of, take grim, take dark, and just kind of drip that into every feature, into the characters, the dialogue, the atmosphere. I consider myself an atmospheric writer. I like to use the environment a lot when I write. And so I try to make everything as dark and dreary as possible. There are storms, there are flash floods, there are monsters in the dark and stuff like that. And that all contributes to this overall feeling of, unease overall, I would have said. And yeah, I think that's probably my best definition. There has to be more evil present than good. There has to be more desperation than hope. And then you read it because you don't know what's going to prevail. You don't know whether everyone's going to die at the end and that's it, and screw you, that's the book done. What were you expecting? Or whether it was everyone's dead but this one character survives and they live to tell the tale, and that it's a balancing act, I would have said.
That's great. Yeah, I know sometimes you can see really heated conversations in terms of what book technically qualifies to be fit, that fits within a certain genre. Especially, I don't know if you've read any books within the cyberpunk genre. What I've seen is that a lot of people are very heated in terms of what actually is cyberpunk or not. And I saw kind of similar traits to Grimdark as well. So I was just interested to see, what your thoughts were on it, since you write within this genre. But I love your explanation. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's as close as I can get. I know that there are certain communities where the whole conversation around what makes a genre that they're reading quite heated, and they're quite passionate about it. And Grimdark is just another one of those. All I can say it's the it's the bottom of the pot, it's the gutter of fantasy. Not necessarily because of quality, but because of contents and what you expect of it. But I'm a sucker for a revenge story, and so as you haven't read your Abercrombie, I'm going to throw the recommendation out there: read Best Served Cold. I actually read Best Served Cold before I read the first trilogy, so I probably missed out on a couple of elements and stuff, but I just picked it up because I like the look of the cover. I liked a revenge story, and I read it, and it remains to this day one of my top 5 books I've ever read.
Oh wow!
It's a controversial opinion because most people don't put those 3 separate books higher than the first trilogy, but I do personally. So I'm a standout there. But
now I was gonna start The Blade itself, which I think was like the first book, right? Is that the first book in that long term? You're saying to go with Best Served Cold first?
I'd say whatever you do, whatever your feelings about the first trilogy, because chronologically you should probably pick the first trilogy. I just jumped at the first book I found because I thought it was cool. Yeah, definitely. If no matter what your feelings about the first trilogy, give Best Served Cold a go, because it was, for me personally, a delight from start to finish. And yeah, I can recommend it to anyone. And I'm pretty sure they're currently making a film of it.
That's what I heard too. Yeah.
Yeah, with a fantastic looking cast. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I think that is the perfect Abercrombie book to actually make into a film.
Well, I think this is a good time now to actually dive into the last beer that we have.
Oh yes.
With me, on my side, I have a fitting with the kind of tropical theme. It's called Longboard Island Lager.
Nice.
I'm a fan of lagers.
I've got the exact same colour scheme as you.
Oh.
I go on for quite a famous UK beer company called Beavertown. Beavertown kind of do these slightly pop arty, colourful ones, but this one is called Heavy Gravity. If I get it on the camera.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's quite an impressive. Fun fact: I've never drunk a beer that has a better name than the first beer I've ever tried. I was down in a city in the south with a couple of my friends to watch a music event, and we went into this really quite fancy looking place that has a lot of beer on tap. And I went in and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll just how about you get the strongest beer there is?" And I said to them, "I don't like beer." And they said, "Oh yeah, just give it a go, it's fine." And the beer that I picked had the name, and it was probably the most grimdark name I've ever heard of beer. It was called Death of the Organ Grinder.
Wow!
And I thought that is a metal kind of a metal beer, and I absolutely loved it. I don't actually remember leaving the pub, so it obviously wasn't.
Have a good night. Have you had it since?
I haven't, no. It's the only place that I've actually found it. I've had a look in a couple of supermarkets and stuff and a couple of pubs since, but I haven't been able to find it since. But I'm going to have to take a visit back down there, I think, and go and find it, go beer hunting.
A lot of people, it takes them a little bit to get acquainted to the taste of beer, or some people just never get acquainted to it. Right. In my case, I wanted to like beer. I wanted to be in that crowd. I was like, yeah, I like Bud Light. Yeah, I like Miller Lite. So where I went to like a gas station, and at that time, turning 21, I bought individual cans, maybe like 8 individual cans of different kinds of beer, different companies, and every single one, I took a sip, and went, no. Poured it out. Literally 7 beers in, I couldn't find one that I can even remotely tolerate until Miller Lite. to where it was almost like it had almost no flavor, to where I didn't mind it. To where it actually got me to be able to drink a beer. Now I don't even like Miller Lite. There's not enough flavor now. So
I am near enough the exact same story. As I said, I grew up in the south, so south of England, so cider's a big thing around here. And then I had that one beer in that one place, and I thought, it isn't good. Next time I went to a pub, I thought, oh yeah, I really fancy a cider. No, I don't. I fancy a beer. And so then, but again, I kind of found a roundabout way of going through it, because I have quite a penchant for IPAs, which are not really beers, but IPAs. And that's purely because a lot of them are flavored. And so I started off having like your grapefruit flavored ones and your couple of apple flavored ones actually. And then I found like coffee stout and stuff like that. And it's meant that I can slowly integrate then actually having proper beer. So I can have like a hazy ale or something like that. And now I can enjoy it, as opposed to the time when I thought it tasted like dishwater. And it sounds like you've had a very similar experience.
Going back into books real quick for you. Have you read the Game of Thrones books at all? Are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I'm going to out myself now, in public, live on camera. I have not watched Game of Thrones. I have not read Game of Thrones.
Oh,
that's a lie. I've read.
Very surprising.
I've seen 2.5 seasons. I've not read a single book. However, I do know a lot about it from various social medias and stuff. So I have a rough idea about what occurs and the slightly hemorrhaged ending.
Well, I was going to ask you if you read the books. Everyone's waiting for this next sequel to come out, and George R.R. Martin is slightly giving out little tidbits here and there, saying, I'm working on it. Stop asking me. I'm working on it. If the eventual situation were to happen where he could not finish it, who do you think would be best to finish Game of Thrones? Or should it be finished at all? Or should it be left as it is? But since you have not read it, I don't know if I should even ask you so.
I think it should be finished. As to who should finish it, obviously you have quite famous examples of ones that worked, like where Robert Jordan passed away and Brandon Sanderson finished off that series and stuff. I'm going to throw out a name that I imagine quite a lot of fantasy fans have never heard of, but my actual recommendation for what I think from the little tidbits that I've read and seen of Game of Thrones, who I think should finish it off, is actually a German author called Marcus Heitz. And Marcus Heitz did the Dwarves series, which I read when I was about 13. I absolutely loved them. And it's a proper dwarf story. There were iron forges in the hills and the mountains and stuff, and there were portals to like demons and stuff like that. But I think, and there were dragons and stuff. But that'd be my throw my hat in the ring. That'd be my vote. Is and also that no one has heard of before. Who I think is fantastic. I love his books. And I think if anyone, from what I remember his writing style to be and what I imagine how Game of Thrones is constructed, he would be the best bet.
Marcus Heitz. I can tell you, I have not heard of him. But is this the guy who inspired Marcus in your books?
Marcus has a very... Actually, come to think of it, a couple of my characters have a really weird backstory. But Ravek, for example, the closest link I can have to him was a character from a series that I wrote, well, the start of a series that I wrote when I was 15, and Ravek, as we know him, was a character called Icarus. And it was a story about a disgraced soldier making a deal with the devil, or like a demon, he had to go up into the mountains, into like a massive city. He had to then be freely elected as their leader, And then once he was elected, he became embalmed. And when he became embalmed and he went up onto the high passage and he, invoked the right of the gods, he would lift his hand out, he would say a summoning, and the underrealm would enter hell, and all hell would break loose, and demons would flock the land and stuff like that. But in the meantime, his pact that he's made was actually taking over part of his soul. And so then he obviously had an arm, and then claws started to appear, and his hands started to scale, and he started to twitch and go a bit mad and stuff, all the while trying to give this visage of being normal and trying to get elected and stuff, and trying to campaign and talk to people and stuff. I've always had themes of madness in my writing. I don't know what this says about me. But in that same series, there was also a older, slightly wiser character who was quite gruff and really good with the sword and was quite caring and protective. He had 2 boys who he looked after and adopted. I think that's where Marcus kind of comes from. But Marcus has become my favourite character. It was always Ravek, but Marcus has become my favourite character. Yeah, obviously I can't reveal too much about what happens in the Fangs of War, and I can't reveal too much about anything after that either. But yeah, he was a unique character in my mind. A man so solely focused on trying to be there for his friend, and then the friend just completely, we know what happens.
Yeah. No, Marcus came out of left field for me in terms of me loving him. He was an awesome character, and I'll leave it at that. So I love Marcus. So now going back to your reading again, I know you mentioned Best Served Cold is like in your top 5, right? Now what's in your top 4 if you have that list in your mind?
My top 4 books. That's a very hard question. One of my favourite books of all time is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Adrian Tchaikovsky is my favourite writer of all time, and I will stand by that hand on heart.
Have you read Elder Race? That's the only one I read from him.
Yeah. Elder Race was quite an interesting book, and as with a lot of Tchaikovsky's more recent stuff, it's a lot of considering what his message is. And obviously that one is like a terraforming hybrid human race, and then these people who are calling him a wizard and stuff like that. And it's this nice blend of fantasy and sci-fi. And then the unexplained happens that neither of them can explain. And yeah, I love those books. And he also releases with the publisher Solaris, he releases a lot of other little novellas and stuff, which I've read quite a few of. Books like Ironclads and One Day All This Will Be Yours, Walking to Aldebaran and stuff like that. And they're all really like conceptual books. But that's what I love about him, is it's always conceptual. And probably one of my first steps into proper adult like fantasy was his Shadows of the App series, which remains one of my favorites of all time. But yeah, the other book, Tower of Living and Dying, Anna Smith Spark, Children of Time, Best of Cold, Ruin by John Gwynne.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That book made me sob my eyes out. I've only ever cried at maybe 3 books in my lifetime, and 2 of them were written by John Gwynne. So that's testament to him. But yeah,
I've only read his Bloodsworn saga so far, and the first 2 were awesome. So I've not read his other series yet.
Yeah, they are also absolutely fantastic. And probably my other one is actually an indie book. It's probably tied between 2 different places, but I think my top pick has to be Salt in the Wound by Benjamin Averin, which is a phenomenal book it's a grimdark book, and it's about trauma and human corruption and stuff like that, and just trying to, grind your way through life and trying to reach it's a revenge story, obviously, so I'm happy. But yeah, it's a fantastic book. I couldn't recommend it more, and I've just read the sequel and it's equally fantastic. So it's me throwing another indie recommendation out there. I do highly recommend it.
And now that you're saying that you're a huge fan of revenge stories, have you read any Evan Winter yet?
I haven't. I have his first book, which is called
Rage of Dragons.
That's the one. I have it on my bookshelf. I have not started it yet. But I guess from what you're implying, that's quite a revenge story.
Oh yeah, it was one of my top revenge stories I've read at this point. So yeah, I know, like in your book, revenge is in with a few characters for sure. Yes. This book, revenge is like the central plot to your one character, and I loved it. So I think you're in for a treat for that one.
So am I correct in saying you've read the prequel and Fangs of War, and you're in the process of reading Horns of Grief?
I have not started Horns of Grief just yet, but I finished Fangs of War. I read the prequel novella, and both are phenomenal. I
will say, keep an eye out for Revek, and revenge is still very much his modus operandi. He is, hot on that. So
I wanted you to have an opportunity to basically just say anything that you want to anyone who's watching this video. It can be about your books, it can be a fun tidbit about you, or anything that you want to say. The floor is yours.
Oh. Can I do a title reveal?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'll throw a title reveal out there. So, first of all, thank you to everyone who has read any of my books, whether it's my fairy tales, whether it's my philosophical fantasies, whether you've dipped your toe in the Blood Steel Saga and you're now running full screaming wind towards Revek. I'm forever grateful for everyone's experience with those kind of things. And I am currently writing the sequel to the Crescent Moon, which I have done a title reveal for before, but I just thought I'd say it here. Book 2 in the Realm of the Prophet series is called The Jade Sun, and it is a story about what you should look for in life. And Mayala meets a new prophet, a new prodigy, who then travels out in the desert with them, and they go and explore this idea. And it's a very cathartic book for me, and releases a lot of my experiences of growing up. And you don't have to wait too long for another installment of the Blood Steel Saga. August the 1st, 2024, book 2.5 arrives, and book 2.5 is called The Knife of Sorrows.
Well, there we go.
And it is, I think it will take the crown from Horns of Grief as comfortably the favorite book I've written. It is a hell of a book. I'm really looking forward to people reading it and everything else.
Did you already announce that title for book 2.5?
Nope, that is...
Wow, 2. We got 2 titles over here. Look at that. That's crazy, man. Well, I'm excited for really both of those because I love philosophical books. And for you guys who are watching the video, definitely go check out EJ Doble's books here, especially the Blood and Steel Saga, because they are phenomenal. I love reading through them. So I highly recommend them. So again, EJ, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed the beer too. Besides Absolutely. Beer number 2 for you. I know that one wasn't a heavy hitter for you, but
it's all right. It made up for it with the Nitro Breakfast Stout. I'll be thinking about that for a while now, and I'll be enjoying that probably for the rest of my evening. So, well worth it.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Peace.